The roast was overcooked. Dry, fibrous, the kind of texture that catches in the back of your throat and makes you reach for the wine before you've even finished chewing. Rachel blamed the oven. Tapping the thermostat like that explained anything. But I had watched her pull it out 15 minutes too early. She had other things on her mind. No one said it, but the air around the table felt thin, brittle, like something was waiting to snap. The house was dressed for peace. Our suburban camouflage. The tablecloth Rachel only used on holidays, the wine glasses we'd unpacked from the back of the cabinet, the candles, lit but unscented, like even that small courtesy was carefully calibrated. It was the performance of a family. Unity, togetherness, domestic grace. But everything about it felt curated, posed, like we were sitting on the set of a show we'd already stopped believing in. Brian made the first toast. Of course he did. "To Emily," he said, raising his glass like some war hero returning from exile. "And to family, wherever we all may come from. Let's be grateful we could all come together like this." He smiled around the table like he expected applause. Rachel gave him that soft laugh I used to think was mine, and Emily tilted her head toward him in that slow, deliberate way she did when she wanted someone to feel seen. It wasn't just a dinner. It was a coronation, and I was the man in the wrong seat. I sipped my wine and kept my jaw from locking. This wasn't the first time Brian had joined us. It had started about a year ago, slowly, like mold behind the walls. First for Emily's birthday, then for a barbecue, then Thanksgiving. Always under some noble excuse. "It's better for her," Rachel would say. "We're being mature." But each time I noticed the way Brian's confidence grew. The way Emily's eyes lingered longer on him than they did on me. The way Rachel began correcting my stories in front of him. The shifts were small, almost invisible, but they added up. Every dinner, every conversation, I felt my place shrinking like a room with the walls closing in. Tonight was supposed to be different. A show of unity, Rachel had said. A night to sit down as a family and start fresh. Now that Emily was turning 22 and finishing college. The timing felt strange, but I agreed. I still believed, stupidly, that maybe something good could be stitched back together if we just kept pretending long enough. Emily hadn't said much all evening. She picked at her food, drank her wine too fast, avoided eye contact like it was a sport. But I noticed the twitch of her jaw. The way she kept glancing toward Rachel, then down at her plate. Something was boiling under the surface. I didn't expect it to explode before dessert. She stood without warning. The chair scraped loudly against the tile. She didn't ask for attention. She didn't need to. The gesture was enough to quiet the room. Her voice was steady, cold, practiced. "I'm pregnant." No one breathed. Not even the dog stirred from under the table. Her words landed like a dropped plate. I looked at Rachel. Her face was unreadable. Then I looked back at Emily. She wasn't done. She looked straight at me, locked eyes the way someone does when they want to hurt you with precision. And she spoke again, her tone like ice. "And Mark, you're just an impostor. You won't be part of my child's life." Then she sat down, like it was over, like a transaction had just been completed. Brian didn't flinch. If anything, he looked satisfied. His lips curled into something smug, soft, subtle, but unmistakable. The kind of smile that says, "See, I've been here all along." He leaned back in his chair and rested his hand on the table like he belonged at the head of it. Rachel still hadn't looked at me. She reached over, touched Emily's hand lightly, gave it a little squeeze. There wasn't even hesitation in it. Just affirmation. Just a quiet, complicit nod. The silence stretched like wire. I didn't speak. I stood. I didn't throw the chair back. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand answers or shout about betrayal. Those things would have implied I still believed there was something here to salvage. I just stood up, adjusted my cuffs, and looked around the table one last time. "Congratulations," I said, calm, even, almost gentle. "Wishing you all the best." And I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave tire marks on the driveway. I got in my car, turned the ignition, and drove down that tree-lined street we called home. under the soft glow of street lamps that blinked like nothing had changed. But everything had. The thing no one tells you about betrayal is that it never comes loud. Comes soft, casual, with smiles and wine and folded napkins. It comes in the form of a quiet dinner where someone calls you an impostor in front of the people you fed, clothed, and protected for over a decade, and no one objects. Comes when your wife nods in agreement. It comes when the biological father smiles, like the final move on a chessboard he never earned. I drove with the windows down, letting the cold night air burn against my skin. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just gripped the wheel tighter than necessary and listened to the sound of wind passing through a life that no longer belonged to me. When I got home, to the house I paid for, I didn't go inside. I parked in the driveway and just sat there. 10 minutes. Maybe more. My hands resting on the wheel. My mind empty. I thought of Emily's first science fair. How I'd stayed up until 2 a.m. helping her build that ridiculous volcano that never erupted on time. How she cried in the car when it failed. How I told her it didn't matter because she still stood up there and presented it like it worked. I remembered the look in her eyes that night. Trust, maybe even pride. That was before she started calling Brian Dad again. I thought of the Christmases, the late-night emergency room visits, the hours at the DMV helping her get her license, the fights over curfews and boyfriends, the long drives back from college with the trunk full of laundry. But mostly I thought of the silence, the way it grew each year, the way her thank yous disappeared, the way Rachel stopped correcting her when she talked about her parents and only meant two people, one who barely showed up and the other who had never left. I was never going to be her father. That much was clear now. But what gutted me wasn't the rejection. It was the erasure. They didn't just push me out. They pretended I had never been there to begin with. When I finally stepped inside the house, everything looked the same. The pictures on the wall, the shoes by the door, the faint smell of lemon cleaner from the hallway. Nothing had moved, but something inside me had. That night, I slept in the guest room. I didn't tell Rachel why. I didn't need to. She didn't ask. The next morning, Rachel was already in the kitchen when I came down. She didn't say anything. She handed me a cup of coffee like it was any other day. Black, just how I always drank it. The cream sat on the table unopened. We both knew I wouldn't touch it. I sat across from her in silence, the ceramic mug warm against my hands, and listened to the soft tick of the wall clock between us. Tick, tick, tick. It was as if the night before hadn't happened. No mention of Emily's announcement. No mention of the words she spat at me like they were preloaded, memorized. You're just an impostor. No mention of Rachel's agreement, her nod. Her hand on Emily's wrist like a seal of approval. I watched her stir sugar into her own coffee. Her nails were perfectly painted. Her fingers didn't shake. What time did you get back? She asked, not looking up. Late. She nodded once. Sipped. The pause that followed was deliberate. I think it's best, she said slowly. If you let Emily handle this next phase of her life with her father. Simpler that way. Her father. Not Brian. Not by name. Not her biological father. Just her father. I stared at her. Waited for a smile. A flinch. Anything to suggest she felt the weight of what she just said. But nothing came. It wasn't rage I felt. Not disappointment. It was a quiet decoupling from the inside of my own life. Like someone had unscrewed my ribs and let the weight of everything I'd carried slide off into the floor. I nodded. Understood. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, and left it in the drying rack. Rachel didn't ask where I was going. I didn't tell her. That was our rhythm now, no questions, no explanations. Just the slow erasure of shared meaning. I didn't go far. Just drove the back roads for hours, past strip malls and dead fields and quiet schools where the bell still rang for children who would grow up to say those same cutting words to men like me. You're not my father. Stay out of it. By the time I returned, the sun was already dipping. The house was empty. Rachel had left a note. Emily's staying with her dad this week. We'll talk later. That was all. Not a word more. I sat in the living room with the lights off, the windows open. The air was cool, but I didn't feel it. The shadows stretched across the carpet like vines creeping into a place they didn't belong. That was when I made my decision. Not a loud one. Not some dramatic vow. Just a simple, final thought that entered my mind and made a home there. I'm done. Not angry. Not bitter. Just finished. That night I logged into every account. The utilities. The joint credit card. The car insurance. The health plan Rachel was quietly still riding under my name. I didn't shut things down, not yet. But I began the process. Resetting passwords. Separating ownership. Reclaiming what was mine. And I made a list. Things I managed. Things no one had ever noticed me doing. Things that kept the family alive while they played their games of loyalty and bloodlines. Mortgage. Taxes. Wi-Fi. The savings account Rachel had access to but never contributed to. Emily's health insurance premiums. The spare car's maintenance plan. All me. I printed the list. Folded it neatly. Slid it into the kitchen drawer where Rachel kept the coupons she never used. And then I got to work. I canceled my Tuesday carpool with Rachel. Told her I'd be taking my own route from now on. She didn't argue, just nodded like it made sense. I removed my name from the college fund I'd been feeding for years, originally meant for Emily's grad school, then repurposed in recent months for her baby's arrival. Rachel had started dipping into it, small amounts at first. Strollers, prenatal classes, a deposit on a nursery set. She never asked. She just used my card and left the receipts on the counter like a shared secret. I called the bank, moved the funds, closed the account. No warning, no scene, just silence. By the third day, Rachel noticed. I tried to pay for the crib, she said one evening, her tone low, like she was ashamed to even bring it up. The card didn't go through. I didn't look up from my book. Yeah, I closed that account. She waited for more. When I gave her nothing, she spoke again. Why? I turned the page. Because I'm not part of Emily's life, and that includes her child. The air between us froze. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just nodded, like she knew she had no argument to make. That night, she slept on the far edge of the bed. I could feel her breathing like it was happening in another room. Over the next few days, the unraveling began. It started with Brian. He lost his job. I found out through Emily's social media. She posted a cryptic story about people who pretend to be heroes, then disappear when things get hard. I didn't react, just watched it fade after 24 hours. But it confirmed what I already suspected. Brian wasn't built for pressure. He had a dozen failed ventures under his belt. A long trail of jobs that fizzled when real responsibility showed up. I'd seen it before. Rachel never admitted it, but deep down, she knew too. A week after the dinner, I got a call from our mutual accountant. Brian had defaulted on a loan, one Rachel had co-signed, back when she still believed in his reinvention. The car he'd been driving, the same one he used to pick up Emily and take her to appointments, was repossessed. So was the studio apartment he'd been calling home base, while he figured things out. I didn't say a word. That weekend, Rachel came to me with a shaky voice. Brian's hit a rough patch. He's between things right now, and Emily needs a little help, just until they get back on their feet. I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't asking for Emily. She was asking for herself. Because the weight of what she'd thrown away was beginning to crush her. I shook my head. No. She blinked, stunned. What do you mean, no? I mean, I said slowly, you told me to stay out of it, so I am. The silence was deeper than I expected. She walked out of the room and didn't come back for hours. I didn't chase her. The days blurred. I moved through the house like a guest, careful not to touch anything I wasn't willing to lose. I stopped fixing the sink that dripped. Stopped refilling the coffee beans when we ran low. Stopped paying the gardener who trimmed the hedges every other week so Rachel could tell her friends our home looked like a magazine ad. The ivy crept higher. The grass yellowed. The silence stretched. I knew what they were hoping for. A blow-up. A fight. A moment of anger they could point to and say, see? That's why we pushed him out. But I never gave it to them. I just kept walking out of their lives one quiet step at a time. Rachel began checking the mail with urgency, opening bills with nervous hands. She never asked where the mortgage payment went, never brought up the subscriptions that stopped renewing. She knew, but admitting it meant admitting she needed me. So she didn't, and I let the distance grow. The collapse didn't come all at once. That's not how these things happen. It arrived in fragments, in unreturned phone calls, in bounced emails, in the quiet unraveling of a life built on the assumption that someone else would always catch the fall. Emily moved back in 2 weeks after the dinner. No announcement, no apology. Rachel cleared out the guest room like it was her sacred duty. New sheets, fresh paint. I think she believed this was some kind of homecoming, a reunion between mother and daughter. But I knew better. Emily came home not because she wanted to. She came home because Brian's safety net snapped. The smug grin he wore at the dinner had vanished. He stopped showing up to doctor appointments, stopped returning texts. His phone, once a constant appendage, now went straight to voicemail. Emily spent 3 days insisting he was just stressed, that he needed space. But by the end of the week, the truth surfaced. He was gone. Not in the dramatic sense. Not missing. Just absent. Like a man walking out of a burning room before anyone notices the flames. The lease he'd co-signed for Emily? Cancelled. The baby registry he'd helped build? Deleted. The joint account Rachel had opened, just in case he wants to contribute? Empty. Emily cried one night. Not loud. Not theatrically. Just soft, defeated sobs behind a closed door while Rachel sat outside it, silent and still. I heard every sound from the hallway. I didn't move, because none of it surprised me. Brian was never built to stay. He had been a silhouette in Emily's life for years, occasionally stepping forward just long enough to remind her he existed. A birthday gift, a dinner, a phone call with just enough warmth to poison the well I'd filled year after year. And when it was time to stand, to provide, to be the man they claimed him to be, he vanished. Of course he did. He always would. Rachel tried to hold it together. She clung to the idea that they'd figure it out, that Emily was strong, that this was just a detour on the road to something better. But her eyes gave her away. They had that look, wide and uncertain, like someone standing on a frozen lake, hearing the cracks beneath their feet. Then came the doctor's bill. Rachel brought it to me on a Thursday, her fingers trembling. Emily had skipped the public clinic and gone to a private OBGYN, one of those boutique practices with plush waiting rooms and espresso machines. The total was over $6,000. Insurance denied it. Brian was supposed to handle it. He hadn't. Rachel placed the bill on my desk without speaking. I looked at it, then at her. I'm not paying this. Her lips parted. Mark, I'm not part of her life. Remember? She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Instead, she picked the paper back up and walked away. That weekend, the lights in Emily's room flickered out. Her circuit breaker had tripped, something I used to fix within minutes. She waited hours before asking me. When she finally did, her voice was brittle, uncertain. Could you check the box? I think the breaker blew. I didn't look up from my laptop. Ask your father. She stood there for a few seconds, unsure if I was joking. Then she turned and walked away. I could have fixed it in 30 seconds. But I didn't, because I wasn't her father. Not anymore. The next week, Rachel's car broke down. She called me from the side of the road, her voice sharp with panic. I'm on Highway 7. The engine light, something's wrong. Can you come? Call Brian. A long pause. I heard her swallow. He's not answering. Then call a tow truck. I ended the call. That night she came home late. Her heels clicked hollow against the tile. I didn't look up as she passed me, but I heard her mutter it under her breath, low and sharp. Bastard. I almost laughed. For 17 years I kept that car running. Replaced the battery. Changed the oil. Bought new tires before winter hit. I did it without being asked. Without being thanked. And now that I'd stopped, now that she had to feel the cost of that silence, suddenly I was a bastard. It only got worse. The baby shower fell apart. Rachel had planned it with the kind of desperation usually reserved for lifeboats. Balloons, centerpieces, catering. All on credit, all on hope. She invited neighbors, co-workers, distant cousins. Emily beamed on the invitations, her belly barely showing, her smile wide and fake. Brian was supposed to host. It was his idea, actually. He'd booked the venue, signed the contract. Then he disappeared again. 3 days before the event, the manager called Rachel. The balance was unpaid. The deposit bounced. No one could reach Brian. If the remaining amount wasn't settled by Friday, the space would be forfeited. Rachel cried in the bathroom for nearly an hour. I listened from the hallway. She didn't ask me for help. She knew better. They canceled the shower. No one mentioned it again. Around this time, Emily started asking questions. Not directly, not to me, but I heard the whispers through the walls. She asked Rachel why the mortgage hadn't gone through, why the water bill came with a warning notice, why her prenatal vitamins weren't being delivered anymore. Rachel deflected. "We're just adjusting," she said. "Things are tight." But Emily knew. The fear in her voice betrayed it. One night, I overheard them arguing. "You said he'd be here," Emily hissed. "You said Mark would support me." Rachel's voice cracked. "That was before you. I didn't think he'd really leave us hanging." That word, us, like I was part of their family again, now that they needed me. But I wasn't. I wasn't even a ghost anymore. I was the absence that made the walls creak. They tried calling Brian again. He sent a text. "Figure it out. I'm not made of money." I never saw Rachel cry like she did that night. Not even when her sister died. She wept in the laundry room, clutching a baby onesie she hadn't even paid for yet. The fabric still had the tags on it. It was blue, pale, like the sky she used to talk about retiring under. I stood on the other side of the wall, didn't move, because it was too late. 2 weeks later, the car seat arrived. I hadn't ordered it. It showed up on the porch with Brian's name on the invoice. Cheap, plastic, off-brand. One of those recalled models that crack under pressure. Rachel tried to return it. The vendor was unlisted. Emily posted a photo of it on her Instagram anyway. Captioned it, "Baby's first ride, courtesy of Dad Blueheart." I saw it by accident. She still had me blocked. By the end of the month, Rachel sat across from me at the kitchen table. The same place we'd shared coffee all those years. Her hands were folded. Her face looked older. "Mark," she said quietly. "I was wrong. I didn't speak. I let things go too far. I should have stopped her. I should have defended you." That night, what she said, it was unforgivable. Still, I said nothing. "I miss you," she whispered. "Not the man in the house. You. The one who fixed things. The one who made this family work." She reached for my hand. I let her, but I didn't close mine around hers. "I'm not angry," I said. She blinked. "I'm just done." Her lip trembled. "So that's it." I nodded. "That's it." She looked down at our hands. Her fingers gripped mine, but mine didn't grip back. "I thought you'd fight for us." "I did," I said. "For 17 years. You just didn't notice until I stopped." She didn't reply, and in that silence, something shattered. Not loudly, not with drama, just a final, small break in the foundation. The weight of everything I carried was no longer mine. It belonged to them now, and they had no idea how to lift it. The house didn't fall apart overnight, but it began to rot in the places no one looked. Started small. The porch light went out, and no one replaced the bulb. The trash piled up higher each week, bags leaning against the garage door like silent accusations. The sink began to leak, then moan, then groan in the early hours like something alive under the counter. I watched it all from a distance. I'd walk past a problem, let it breathe, let it multiply. I no longer fixed things. I no longer explained myself. I no longer bore the weight. And for the first time in years, I slept. Not always well, but deeply. Without dreams. Without the tension of plans and repairs and budgeting tomorrow's comfort. I woke with no one expecting me to make anything better. There was freedom in that. A cruel, hollow kind of freedom, but freedom still. Rachel moved around me like a ghost. We spoke when necessary: grocery lists, door deliveries, small logistical negotiations. But the silence between us grew roots. Every word spoken now was just a shard of the life we had already buried. And Emily stayed in her room most days. Pregnant and tired, no longer glowing, no longer pretending the father would swoop back in. Brian had vanished again, this time fully. No texts, no calls, no explanations. She reached out once, according to Rachel. He responded with a single sentence. "I'm not ready to be a parent. Don't contact me again." I didn't say anything when I heard. There was nothing to say. They had made their choice. Rachel didn't defend him anymore. That smile she used to wear when Brian was around, the smile that made me feel like an outsider in my own home, had died. I think she realized, in some quiet place, that she'd bet against the man who built everything. And now she was watching it collapse. The mortgage fell behind 2 weeks later. I'd taken my name off the autopay. The alert hit her phone during dinner. She didn't mention it, just set her fork down and stared at the blinking screen. I kept eating, chewed slowly, swallowed hard. I didn't offer help. Later, I heard her on the phone in the garage trying to get a grace period. Her voice cracked when she said my name. "He left. Not physically, but he's not paying anymore." I didn't leave. That's what hurt her most. I stayed, lived in the same house, walked the same halls, but I became absence incarnate. A man who moved with intention, but not obligation. I occupied space without warmth. And in that, they saw what I had always shielded them from, the reality of their own dependence. Emily came to me one night. It was just after midnight. I was sitting in the den, reading an old book I had never finished, some crime novel I kept meaning to donate. She knocked lightly on the doorframe. Not the aggressive knock she used to favor, not the entitled thud of a child demanding to be heard. This was cautious, measured. I didn't look up. "Can I come in?" I nodded once. She stepped inside. She was wearing one of Rachel's oversized sweaters, her arms wrapped around herself. Her eyes were puffy. She hadn't been sleeping. The pregnancy had moved into its uncomfortable stage. She shifted her weight from foot to foot like she couldn't find a position that didn't hurt. She started, then paused. "I wanted to say I'm sorry." I closed the book. "For what?" Her eyes darted toward the carpet. "For the dinner. For what I said. That you were an impostor. That you weren't going to be part of the baby's life." I didn't mean it. Not really. I waited. She swallowed. "I was angry, scared. And Brian had been filling my head with all these things. That you'd try to take control. That you'd push him out. I didn't think he'd disappear." Her voice cracked. "I thought he'd step up, be a father. But he's not. He never was." Still, I said nothing. She stepped forward. "I know I hurt you. I know I pushed you out. But I'm alone now. And Mom's trying, but she doesn't know what to do. I need someone who understands how to hold things together." There it was. Not love. Not respect. Need masquerading as repentance. She wasn't here because she missed me. She was here because the man she chose to call father had vanished. And now, the man she erased was the only one left standing. "I'm not angry," I said finally. She looked up. "I'm not looking for an apology. I'm not looking for forgiveness. I just want you to understand something." She nodded. "For 17 years," I said. "I showed up. I filled in every crack your real father left behind. I paid for your food, your school, your clothes. I lost sleep over your mistakes. I took pride in your wins. I kept this house standing with nothing but effort and love." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "And the moment you got pregnant, the first thing you did was tell me I didn't matter. I was wrong." I held up a hand. "No, you were honest. That's the difference. You didn't lie that night. You said what you really believed. That biology matters more than presence. That showing up means nothing unless blood says you belong." Her lips trembled. "I don't hate you," I said softly. "But I won't forget." Silence. Then she whispered, "So what happens now?" I leaned back. "Now you figure it out." She blinked. "On your own." "Yes." Her voice rose. "But what about the baby? You're just going to ignore your grandchild?" The word stung more than I expected. Grandchild. Something I had allowed myself to imagine, quietly, cautiously, before that dinner. Before she drew the line in public, with Rachel's nod and Brian's grin. "I'm not his grandfather," I said. "You made that clear." She stood there, stunned. Then she turned and walked out. No tantrum. No screams. Just the quiet footsteps of a girl realizing the world does not always wait to forgive. Rachel confronted me a few days later. She didn't yell, didn't accuse. She just sat across from me and asked, "Are you really going to let her raise that baby alone?" I stared at her. "She told me I had no place in his life, and you backed her." Her shoulders slumped. I was scared. I didn't want to fight. You thought I'd stay anyway." She didn't deny it. "I gave everything," I said. "To you, to her, to this house. And the moment I needed one of you to stand beside me, you both turned away." "I know," she whispered. "And I'm sorry. I don't want an apology." "Then what do you want?" I took a breath. "I want peace." She closed her eyes. "Does that mean we're done?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure. The baby was born early. A boy. Emily sent a photo to Rachel, who showed it to me without asking. He was small, red-faced, wrapped in a blue blanket. He didn't have a name yet, but I already knew what he wouldn't be. He wouldn't be mine. Rachel tried once more. "He'll need someone, a man, a father figure." "So did I said. "And I didn't get one either." She stopped asking. Weeks passed. I kept to myself, paid my own bills, ate my own food, walked through the neighborhood like a man who had survived something private and shameful. People smiled, waved. "How's the family?" they'd ask. And I'd smile back. "Doing just fine." They didn't need to know the truth, that I'd been written out of the script, and yet I still lived in the set. That every day I passed the nursery and felt nothing but distance. That I had become the shadow in the hallway. The man who used to hold everything together. The man they thought would never walk away. But I had. Not with bags. Not with fury. But with silence. And silence, when earned, can be louder than any scream. Months later, Emily came home from the hospital. Alone. Brian had never visited. Not once. The name on the birth certificate was left blank. Rachel helped her settle in. Diapers. Feedings. Late-night crying that echoed through the walls like sirens. I didn't offer help. Didn't ask questions. And then one morning, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Written in shaky handwriting, and signed but unmistakably Emily's. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I should have seen what you were." I folded it neatly, put it in my desk, and didn't reply, because sorry is currency best spent early. And she had waited too long. Now the house is quiet, not peaceful, just still. Rachel and I exist like old furniture. Functional, unmoving, placed near each other for convenience, not affection. Emily takes care of her son. Alone. She never calls him by name around me. Maybe out of guilt. Maybe out of respect. But the line remains. Drawn in a dinner that should have united us. Etched in silence. Held in place by absence. So I ask you, was I cruel? Was I heartless to walk away from the people who once called me theirs? Or was this the price they paid for treating love like something owed instead of something earned? Would you have stayed? Would you have carried them even after they let go? Or would you have done what I did, let the weight fall and watch them learn what it means to stand on their own? Tell me, what would you have done?